Much of the industry on the island is built up around building boats or servicing boats or providing berthing or harbours or marinas, but also some of the technical stuff about sail making. And clearly when you look back in the earlier parts of last century, much of the big racing went on in the canals, and they clearly have much more racing, and it's an international event. Yarmouth is a much smaller place, but surprisingly Yarmouth Harbour's income is about the same as Cowes Harbour, and that's because we own and control more land than Cowes does. Today we're part of what goes on with Old Gaffers. We provide the facility, the harbour, but also a lot of the land as well, because we have the green which is over there on a 99-year lease from the council, and much of what goes on is on the green or in Pier Square, which is ours as well. And at a time when we're trying to grow the number of events that we have here, it would be utter madness for us to do anything that undermines Old Gaffers. So this year the commissioners are putting £5,000 cash into the event, as well as the facilities that we provide. It's important for the town as well, and it probably brings in at least 30,000 visitors a year. Most of those people on the island, as well as the boats. We're looking to improve the facilities behind the harbour office, to build a decent quay wall, to make a safer area for fishermen and commercial operators, and to provide some better facilities, including a washdown facility for boats. These days, increasingly, there's concern about what goes into the water. When people wash down, parts of their anti-fouling goes into the water, and that contains some metals which aren't very good. So if you can wash down into a holding tank and then pump away the water, that's what we would prefer to do rather than what goes on at the moment. And increasingly we expect some environmental legislation to control that anyway. So that's in the southwest corner. And then in the main part of the harbour, the inner harbour between the breakwater and the bridge, we would expect to put in more pontooning for a variety of reasons. One is customer demand. About 90% of customers who arrive at the harbour entrance ask to go on a walk ashore pontoon, such as the one on which we're standing at the moment. They don't ask the cost, they just want the convenience of being able to walk ashore, to plug in for electrics and to get water as well. So the easier it is for people to get ashore, the better it is for people to go into the businesses in the town. And the third point for us is our reliance on the Whitelink ferries in Yarmouth. So Whitelink are 40% of our income, and Yarmouth Harbour is far too reliant on it. It's too much of a risk. So by increasing our income from yachts, both residents and visitors, and providing the facilities that they want, we slowly start to reduce our reliance on Whitelink. The number of berths in the harbour as a whole stays exactly the same, and the split between residents and visitors stays exactly the same. So we're creating more walk ashore berths for visitors and for residents, and we'll still have 35 buoys outside. So will it be different? Yes, it will. Will it earn more income from the harbour? Yes, we think it will, and we think it will be better for the future of the harbour as well. I think what we're trying to make sure is that Yarmouth remains where it is as a destination of choice, and we're aiming for it to be the destination of choice on the south coast.
How will Yarmouth Harbour accommodate the rising volume of traffic?
Both in 2009 and now in 2010, we're discounting our prices from Monday to Thursday nights. And what you see is we're here on a weekday, and you can see in the background that actually there's quite a lot of space around. And even in August, when it's good weather, there will be space in Yarmouth midweek. But on a Saturday or a bank holiday, it's crammed full. So what we're trying to do is spread it during the week. And what we'd like to do with the town is to try to spread the season as well. So spread it into April and into October if we could.
Okay, how do you respond to SPS concerns about environmental impact of the Yarmouth Harbour reconfiguration?
I think the Solent Protection Society, which is a pressure group, so has no responsibility, is ill-informed. Yarmouth Harbour Commissioners, along with other harbours, do have some responsibilities. The environment is one of the major issues for the harbour, and we have to deal with organisations like Natural England, the Environment Agency. We have to get licences to which they all have to have a stake in. When we've looked at what development we could do in this harbour or in our area of jurisdiction, we've looked up the river, clear conflict with environmental issues in the river. And we've also looked outside the breakwater out to sea, but there's a seagrass bed out there, and the likelihood of us getting permission to do a development to the north of the harbour is very low indeed. So my answer to the Solent Protection Society is, hey, we've looked at all of the things that you've suggested and actually ruled them out. But if you want to bring tourists to the island and you want some industries, I'm afraid you are going to come into conflict with the environment. And you can't have it both ways, and you have to come to some sort of route down the middle. Do we always get it right? No, but we try to. For Yarmouth and the rest of the island, a particular issue is space. We haven't got much space to expand, to grow, to bring in more business. There are conflicts with the residents on the island, many of whom are reluctant to see change, so they don't want to see new developments. We talk about what we're trying to do in Yarmouth, but actually when you look around the whole of the Solent and the south coast of England, people aren't investing money in it because there's nowhere else to go. So the quite small things that we're trying to do to improve things in Yarmouth are one of the few that are going on. I know there's a talk about development in Cowes, but actually when you look along the south coast, there isn't much else. We've talked about the kind of the here and now and what's going on this year, but actually the biggest long-term threat to the harbour here is sea level rise. And I realise a number of people are quite cynical about global warming and sea level rise, but we've spent quite some time looking at some of the facts of the situation, and the facts are there's been sea level rise for 200 years, and you can see that from tide gauges. It's accelerating. It'll be faster in the second half of the 21st century, and the middle of the road prediction that DEFRA are using in this area would mean that sea level would be up a metre by the end of the century. We had a storm surge, which was the weather and the tide combining in March of 2008, which took the water over the quay here and up to the door of the harbour office. That would become a fairly regular occurrence by the middle of the century. By 2050, at the top of a spring tide, there'll be 2 foot of water in the square in Yarmouth on a regular occurrence. By the end of the century, 4 foot of water. So forget sandbags, it will be no good to you. And in a report that we're putting together as the Yarmouth Working Group on Coastal Defence, we've looked at what can and what can't be done. But I think we do need a severe dose of realism. This is Yarmouth. It's a small town in the west of the Isle of Wight, and it's not even a priority on the island, and the island's not a priority nationally. So to think there's going to be loads of money for defending small places like Yarmouth would be just naive. So we're suggesting that there need to be some gates for when we have predicted high tides. Over time we'll need to build up the quay wall and maybe the banks, but we need to look, I use the word holistically, because if you build a wall somewhere, part of what you're doing is pushing the wall pushing the water elsewhere. So you've got to be very careful about what you do. But if we want to protect Yarmouth, its harbour and the local environment, we have to accept that some places you can protect and in others you're going to let the water in. But we have to try and manage what we're doing. And so we're taking a stance at a very early stage that we need to be putting money aside for that. And part of our development of the harbour is to put some money together for things we may have to do in the future. And we need to have a pretty open debate about what's worth protecting and what isn't. And there are some things that some people would like to protect that won't be.